Okay, welcome to Energyscape's latest presentation. This one's based on a paper or technical report we just put out titled Unidentified Anomalous Phenomena, Mechanics and System Architecture, a reverse engineered model of resonant fieldcraft dynamics and scalar coupled mobility. That's just been published to Energyscape's lab ResearchGate profile if you're interested in downloading it. So what we've got here is a narration of the presentation that's come out of that paper we've written, which really gives us as a business the opportunity to talk to the model we've developed from reverse engineering, orb mechanics and dynamics, and looking at structure and resonant fieldcraft architecture that has come out of this research. So the title is UAP Mechanics and Architecture, Structural Dynamics, Orientation and Navigation of Orbs and Orb-like Craft and Objects, put together by myself and Stephen Lear of Hidden World, who does a lot of the quantum image analysis of data, videography and photometry we've gathered in the field on anomalous phenomena. So I've got here, if we just take a look over here, we'll talk about this later on, this animation here, or this GIF file, which really pulls apart in stacked frames and color palettes using waveform analysis the underlying structure or assembly of orb or orb-like objects and craft phenomena. So just as an introduction here, what we've got is just a little bit of background. So orb-like anomalous objects demonstrate motion and structural behavior that challenges traditional physical laws. So this presentation from our business develops a comprehensive model of orb mechanics, and that's rooted in observational analysis, scalar field theory, and layered membrane dynamics. What we also do in the presentation, which is in our paper that we've published as well, is we incorporate phase transition diagrams, structural cross sections of orbs, energetic coupling mechanisms, and the model proposes a functional architecture for orbs as scalar resonant fieldcraft. Now the key mechanisms of this include lattice coupling with the substrate of space itself, toroidal vortex propulsion, membrane indexed gating or valves, and inertial phase translation. And this contributes to our coherent theory of scalar resonant mobility systems. Now this is an acronym SRMS that we've come up with to label what's going on with this anomalous phenomena, and also reverse engineering it and making or construction of resonant fieldcraft technology. So up here we've got, and we'll talk about this later, what we've pulled out of our research as the key phases or stages of anomalous orb assembly, including coupling with the fabric of space itself, or lattice coupling, which is a scalar EM core or nucleated core that initiates that boundary assembly, encapsulation and disengagement, and then condensation and valve formation for orientation and navigation through the substrate of space. So here we have reverse engineering UAP. So orbs and orb-like craft and objects demonstrate motion that defies known physics, suggests that our perception of reality is flawed, our understanding is limited. It also suggests that our public science is deeply flawed and incomplete. And I did do an interview with Ross Coulthart on Reality Check on all of this research, and we've come a considerable way since that interview in terms of analysis and interpretation of our data, in particular the quantum imaging and scalar or resonant fieldcraft technology. And this is the original shoot here from our videography that was on Ross Coulthart's show when we were interviewed, of an anomalous orb that was filmed or scanned going through the field of view. So in terms of the contents of the presentation, we start with domain interface technology. We look at energetic ingress and egress of orbs. We look at rods as derivatives of energetic orb structures. We look at the detailed layered membrane structure of orbs. We then take a good look at quantum imaging and substrate coupling or lattice coupling with the substrate of space itself. We look at rods as derivatives of orbs and how they navigate this substrate. We look at valve indexing and energetic coupling, detailed index coupling mechanisms with the substrate lattice of space, a summary which is modeling orb mechanics, and a conclusion about the stages of orb formation and then where to from here. In terms of orb domain interface technology, it's fundamentally different to what we've come to know in terms of motion. So orbs do not transit physical space, right? They phase through physical space, and we've got pretty conclusive evidence of this. And orbs couple with the substrate of space itself, and we call that the lattice, or the lattice of four-dimensional space, because you have to think of space as being four-dimensional, and then an orb can access inertial motion by doing this. Now, in terms of mechanics, we've got an orb that manifests and moves through the field of view in this video I'm about to show you. An analysis showed a nucleated core appear and gather material around it, and that's in the diagram underneath the video. And these layers coalesced around this nucleated core, and boundary layers formed. Now, this is the original zoom in of phase shifting and the manifestation of the orb as it moves through the field of view. And here we've just done a contrast and edge enhancement of that. And then over here we've used frame stacking and color reduction to peel back the layers inside this orb, and you can see there's some sort of nucleated core here and an assembly of layers or membranes around this core, and a layered structure evolves, which seems to involve some sort of toroidal structure around the central core. And then we've got this outer membrane layer, which we see later on is actually consists of a number of layers, and there's very specific reasons for that. So let's have a quick look at the video. Alright, so as you can see from that video, that orb passed through the field of view, and because it manifested as it did so, we've gained a significant amount of data, empirical data, to analyze through videography and photometry, and then apply quantum image analysis and frame stacking to that, and using color reduction and waveform analysis to give us all this information about resonant fieldcraft, reverse engineering. Here we can see, I'm just highlighting here in terms of energetic ingress and egress. We found this to be a common feature of most, if not all, anomalous objects and orb-like craft that we've got data on in the field, which we continue to work with. So it showed that there was an energetic ingress and egress regions through the orb that seems to always be at right angles to the direction of motion. What also occurred was a Venturi effect due to vortex generation internally, which we'll unpack in subsequent slides. This exhibited features characteristic of what we commonly know as a Venturi pump, and we can see here, and it's the same in the extended forms of orbs or rods and other anomalous objects or craft-like objects that we filmed in the field as well. That there's always, and it seems to be perpendicular to the direction of motion, which is this way. We've got this ingress, we've got this toroidal vortex that occurs, and we've got this energetic egress out the other side, always perpendicular to the direction of motion. And then here we can see again this slightly elevated or distended form at either end, either side of the orb as it moves through the field of view, and we've got all this speckling or ridged marks around the edge of the orb. Now we look at that later on because we're going to talk about valve indexing and scalar node coupling and the importance of the separation of the outer layers from the inner toroidal vortex in terms of this Venturi-like effect inside it. So if we look here at rods as derivatives of this structure, the same thing seems to be going on. We've got similar energetic ingress and egress observed in rods through an outer membrane layer parallel to the direction of motion. And we can see that over here quite clearly. There's some sort of ingress of energetic field coupling and then an egress out the other side as the rod moves through the field of view. Now, there is similar energetic coupling of the outer layer membrane to the substrate or lattice nodes that was observed in rods, and we discussed this in our paper that we've put out. Now, there seems to be some sort of mechanism of pulling itself through the substrate or lattice of space itself, which is similar to the orbs, and we'll show that later on where there's this lattice node coupling. And we can see here, we talk about it when I show you the frame by frame analysis, that there seems to be some sort of reaching out or pulling itself through this lattice, coupling with nodes in the lattice or substrate of space, harnessing material or energy from that, which is then circulated around the outer membrane, enters through an ingress point at right angles to the direction of motion, and then there's an egress point on the other side. And during that, it's processed through the membrane layers, and then couples with the toroidal vortex inside and the nucleated core as a mechanism of motion. And this is the original shot here of a rod. Now we've got quite a bit of detail and published papers on evidence as to why we think rods are extended forms of rods that have taken on a different morphology, and we talk about that in other papers. There's simply not time to talk about that here. What we've got here is frame stacking, which has allowed us to compile quite a detailed structural analysis of the internal layout of an orb. Now, as the orb forms, these layers develop around the nucleated core. So when it's fully formed, the external layers are actually porous, and we've got quite a bit of evidence for that. Now, there's an internal cavity which suggests a toroidal vortex is in operation, which seems to be encased by these outer membrane layers. Now, the nucleated core is surrounded by the vortex and flux lines. Now we can see another view of the vortex here and these looping flux lines that go around it as well. Now, when we did quantum imaging, we used Doppler phase shift color spectrum effects to determine that this is in fact going on depending on the amount of red shift and blue shift. So that's that, and then evidence of magnetic field lines protruding from around the orb was also observed, and it's quite clear in this image that there are multiple fracture or field lines through this orb, along with quite a powerful, we can see here, energetic ingress or pulling in, going through this vortex or connecting with it around the nucleated core, and then coming out the other side. And here we see the membrane layers in a fully formed stacked orb of the same the same energetic mechanics of ingress and egress, pulling this energy in, which is spun through these layers according to this toroidal vortex, which is coupled with a nucleated core. So this is how these objects are powered and able to demonstrate the features characteristic of what we call non-Newtonian motion. Now, in terms of quantum imaging and substrate coupling dynamics, we can see here, and we've got here the quantum imaging that goes with the frame-by-frame capture of the same orb moving through the field of view. Now, as it formed, it appeared to couple with and pull in surrounding material from an energetic lattice or substrate of space itself. And I can point that out here. We do a detailed account of this in our paper, but as it comes into the field of view, it actually couples with nodes in this lattice or substrate of space and seems to harness the energy from it, which then goes through the ingress and egress points. And we point that out in our paper. Now, as it moves or manifests into the field of view, the nucleated core has outer layers form around it first. So the internal structure doesn't form straight away, and it seems to draw in material from its surroundings. Now, the orb's internal structure, as I pointed out, forms last, consisting of concentric rings around a nucleated core, around which a self-sustaining toroidal vortex appeared. Now, here is a frame-by-frame capture of this rod we talked about, or extended form of an orb, going through using quantum imaging this same lattice or substrate of space, four-dimensional space. Now, the sequence shows a rod coupling to the energetic lattice or a node in the substrate of space, which you can see here. Now, the rod appears to pull itself through this energetic substrate or lattice of space, and a good analogy is like an octopus pulling itself along the sand. And we can see here we've got some sort of node here. Now, in four-dimensional space of geometric potentials, or the substrate or lattice of space itself, there's all these eddies and swirls when we do quantum imaging that seem to suggest coalescing of energy at various points. And there seems to be an ability to recognize, reach out, and pull an object through this substrate. So here's one here that this rod closes, couples with, passes through, remembering that ingress and egress is perpendicular to the motion or direction of motion, and then as it passes through, it leaves that node behind in the exact same position that it found and moves on and couples with another one. So these lattice nodes seem to be fixed in position and represent energetic energies within the fabric of space itself. Now, just pointing out here some more detail about valve indexing and energetic coupling, because what we've got up here is quantum imaging and stacked frame analysis using Doppler, redshift and blueshift to highlight what's going on as the orb forms, both internally and in particular on the outer layer. So there's two key functions we've determined in the outer layer. First, valve indexing. So that's colors other than red that allow ingress and egress of energetic material on either side perpendicular to the direction of movement. Now you can see that form here with these color palettes, remembering that ingress and egress is across the orb perpendicular to the direction of motion. So those outer layers are quite important to have them formed first, so that energetic ingress and egress can start straight away, even before we see this toroidal field form around the nucleated core and the internal structure take form. Secondly, the outer membrane connection points in red for coupling with energetic nodes within the surrounding environment, which is the lattice or substrate of space itself. Now you can see those red Doppler shifted nodes, we call them lattice nodes, around that orb, and they also form pretty quick and connect with these nodes in the substrate of space itself, and to pull itself through in the direction of motion. So the direction of motion is this way. Now these nodes, they couple with in the direction it's going, like feelers or tentacles reaching out from the surface of the orb, and they seem to be sort of gated. So we've got a lock and turn mechanism going on as it rotates. There is ingress and egress, like a key, a lock and key for energy. So it pulls the energy in, it spins around, and then it enters and exits the internal membrane layers of the orb as it moves. Now, internally, the compressed toroidal vortex forms while this is going on and rotates around a nucleated core. Now, that generates the flux lines that we see in other image analysis when it's fully formed as well. and then material appears to be sucked into the orb from the outer layer membrane due to this Venturi effect from index valving and this lock and key model that's going on. We've got here more detail on index coupling mechanism. So this is just a zoom in looking at valve indexing. Now on the outer membrane, we get this Doppler shifted color spectrum that shows energetic ingress and egress. Now this is egress on one side of the orb and perpendicular to the direction of motion. So that's come in and it's coming out the other side. And you can quite clearly see here the outer membrane, and sitting just on top of it, there's this valve indexing which regulates or controls the egress of energy after it's entered the orb. You can see this, all the external structure here on the outer membrane. Remember, energetic ingress through here, spun around through the layers, toroidal vortex, nucleated core, and then egress on the outside. And these red Doppler shifted nodes appear as it spins like a lock and key and valve indexing, and then couples and spins and couples and spins and couples. So those two things are going on simultaneously on the outer surface or membrane of the orb. So just to summarize, so the presentation, what we've got in terms of orb function is that it probes this four-dimensional energetic lattice of space itself. It looks for edge localized nodes within the substrate, which are eddies of concentrated energy. It couples with and harnesses those nodes for energy intake, egress and egress. It has a nucleated core that bridges scalar and EM fields simultaneously and enables inertial decoupling from its surrounding environment, and that gives us those observables we talk about with instantaneous acceleration, disappearing and reappearing. It applies and constructs membrane layering to achieve phased modulation through its local environment and navigational control. And that's why we have what appears to be this instantaneous shifting through space and time, superluminal, so faster than the speed of light. And this is a model here just demonstrating the key features of an orb and the substrate or lattice structure of space itself, or a four-dimensional space of geometric potentials of energy or energetic nodes. And this is a rendered model here from an actual image analysis that we've done. So just concluding, here we have stages of orb formation. So we've got a nucleated core couples with the surrounding lattice or substrate. A boundary layer is formed, as we've got on the picture there. Third, layers are generated and stabilized to stabilize the core and sustain it, allowing disengagement from its surroundings. And fourth, the layered membranes are finalized and condensed, allowing the orb to orientate itself to the surrounding lattice or substrate and to phase through it. So we've got here, this is just frame stacking of that original footage that you saw, and then over here, again using quantum imaging, we've been able to use a color palette to highlight how this whole process occurs and how this orb is formed using quantum imaging. Now, where to from here? Just finishing off, this expanded model provides a viable template for understanding orb and orb-like craft and object UAP through a scalar and trained membrane-regulated propulsion framework. The resulting architecture offers not only physical explanation for anomalous motion, but a pathway to advanced aerospace engineering based on lattice coupling, layered field resonance, and toroidal vector control. And finally, future work should focus on replicating these dynamics in a lab or lab conditions using porphyrin biomaterials, closed-loop vortex chambers, scalar field generators, and aiming towards the SRMS fieldcraft prototypes that we are putting forward. And we have got a lot of background information on how and in what way to go about doing that and develop a testbed field prototype and then look at a commercial scale production model too. And just to wrap up, I'd like to thank my small team for all the work that goes on behind the scenes, those that have reached out to us to provide some advice that wish to remain anonymous, and we look forward to progressing this and building our business around it and extending on and going into production and prototype testing with stakeholders and investors. So thank you very much.